My name is Jason Hines. I'm CEO and co-founder here at Gigasheet. Really glad to have you join us today with our friends at RevenueBase, a partner of ours. We're really excited to show you a whole bunch of stuff, how to leverage B2B sales contact information for prospecting, addressing your or identifying your total addressable market, and how to use Gigasheet to do that. I'm CEO and co-founder here. With me, I've got Steve Sean, who leads our tech solutions, who will be taking you through a little bit of the capabilities on our side. And then we've got Sammy from RevenueBase, who's going to be doing an in-depth demo of their data there. And it's pretty cool to see the capabilities they have are pretty amazing. If you have questions, we'll take those at the end. You can put them in the chat panel or the Q&A. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. But with that, I think we will get started. So the whole idea, we'll talk a little bit about Gigasheet, and then we'll get into the solution that we have with RevenueBase, and we'll talk mostly about their data and the capabilities that Gigasheet sort of enables there. But the whole idea behind Gigasheet and what we've built here was something that we experienced in numerous different industries, and that is users often want to find answers on their own, but when you're dealing with really large data sets, it's almost never that easy. You've got to, and now you're working with databases and SQL, you've got often to use ETL and data pipelines, things like Python, when really, if you could access that data in a spreadsheet-like interface, you could probably answer a lot of the questions on your own. Spreadsheets are the common language. Everybody already speaks them. It requires very little training. Those skills are really common across the workplace. If you think about how many people you know that know how to write SQL and regularly code in Python versus how many people know spreadsheets in the business world, it pales in comparison. So the whole idea behind our product is not everyone can write SQL or code, and they really shouldn't have to get to many answers that they'd like to get. So we invented Gigasheet. It's a spreadsheet-like UI that sits on top of data warehouses, databases, and if you don't have a warehouse or database, you can use Gigasheet as your own. And it's really easy to use. It's self-service and intuitive interface. We have over 160,000 people who have used this product on their own without any training whatsoever. It scales to billions of rows of data. And the beautiful thing about this is you can work with the entire data set, not a slice or aggregate or sample of it. So you can work with everything at once. We have a live Snowflake integration. So for example, if you are running Snowflake, you can add this as sort of like a UI, a lightweight UI that sits on top. It also works with other warehouses too, like Databricks and BigQuery, and a whole list of others. So the cool thing about that is you can use the central governance and policy controls you may already have in place. That's basically a very high-level overview of what Gigasheet does. The whole idea is to make big data, spreadsheet easy. And we would love to talk to you about that if you're interested in delivering interactive large data sets to your users or customers in the way that we're going to talk about how RevenueBase does it today. That's a little bit about us. It's super easy to get started. We'll show you just a taste of that. You can start for free on our website by signing up and dropping in a large file. If you just want to play with the user experience and get to know it, you can work with 100,000 rows of data there. And then really the power comes in when you work with like really, really large data sets. So when you attach it to your warehouse, use the interface to build like pivot tables or build reports, and then even allow exports optionally to your users or in this case, with RevenueBase to your customers. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve on our tech solutions team. He's going to show you a little bit about how that interface works, how you might go about setting it up. Then we're going to hand it off to revenue-based. We're going to talk about get into the data, which is actually like the really exciting part, right? Okay, so I got this interface. It's cool. It's easy to use, but I'm really interested in, how can we apply this? And that's where Sammy's going to come in, talk about the work they do at revenue-based and their data that they offer, which is pretty incredible. So with that, Steve, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. I will share my screen. All right, hopefully you can see this. And so what you're seeing here is Snowflake. This is a live Snowflake instance, but it should be said, what we were hearing from our customers is they were coming to us with Databricks, with Snowflake, with Redshift, with BigQuery, with Postgres databases. And they had these huge data sets in these various data repositories. And these repositories are incredibly powerful. Each of them are particularly good at one thing or another. But what they all are is very difficult to work with if you're not someone who's trained up in that particular technology. So these huge data sets were accumulating in these repositories, but to distribute these data sets to the people who actually need to do analysis on that data, be it internal stakeholders, I need to get slices to the marketing team and then to the security team and to the sales team and to the product team and so on, or to external customers. If you're a data vendor of sort of like revenue base, being able to share, be it slices of this data, it's very difficult if you're not familiar with writing this kind of SQL. So right here, you see that I've got this transactions database. Number of rows you could see is 80.5 million rows, 4.4 gigabytes of data. The kind of thing that you can't just dump that as a CSV and send it to the marketing team and say, go ahead and look at all the transactions and figure out how to appropriately plan your, strategy for the next quarter. You can in Snowflake see a preview of the data. The preview is going to give you just 100 rows. But even Snowflake understands that people want to see this in rows and columns. It is the best way to understand this data. So what Gigasheet does is allows you to connect your data repository directly to our interface. And instead of just saying 100 rows of these 80.5 million, we can come over here and see all 80.5 million rows in a rows and columns interface. And as Jason said, spreadsheets being this universal language, everybody sort of understands this intuitive interface where you can come here and just immediately filter to, say, the order placed by month. And really quickly, I'm filtering down to the data that I care about. Maybe I want to see specifically the revenue where it's greater than 30 and so on. This is happening on data live in Snowflake, but using the Gigasheet UI, it allows you to make sense of these huge data repositories in a way that anyone who's familiar with spreadsheets can work with. And to see exactly how customers are doing this, I'm going to now pass it over to Sammy at RevenueBase.
Great, thanks guys. I'm going to share my screen as well. So my name's Sammy. I spearhead all of the revenue initiatives here at RevenueBase. We are a B2B data company that provides company and contact information for go-to-market teams to be more effective in the market than really what has been status quo as of late. So we're really known for our data quality and our targeting capabilities, which I'll show you in just a few moments. So I've been with RevenueBase for just about 3 years now, which is crazy to say because that was really the genesis of our company. Our founder, Mark, was also a early founder of another data company that was actually acquired by D&B. So he's very well versed in solving these types of problems and taking a much different approach to doing so. Prior to RevenueBase, I had spent several years selling and buying data. So I know how hard it can be to reach the right buyers, engage with them, and build strong pipeline. Let me move on. So what we've found is it's only become even harder over time. And the B2B space we find to be just massively underserved, comparable to the B2C space. You'll always get personalized text messages, emails from on the consumer side, but you don't really get anything that personalized on the business side. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just kind of been the status quo because there hasn't been any data providers today that provide a level of specificity for marketers, salespeople to be able to really understand and engage with a prospect effectively. So the end result has kind of just been our buyers, the people we want to go after, they're just filled with spam and like sifting through their inboxes. Nobody's really getting noticed, and we don't really have a lot of time to engage with somebody. And the best way I like to think about the B2B sales and marketing space is we're all sort of sitting in this ocean and we've all got the same boat, and that boat's equipped with the same exact tools. And everybody's just trying to go and fish for the same fish. But what revenue-based does is we can't change the ocean. There's a finite number of prospects, B2B folks that are in the space. But what if we could change that boat? And what if we could give you some more tools that give you a competitive edge so that you can really easily determine, I only want to go after salmon, or I only want to go after tuna today, where everybody else is just kind of doing the spray and pray model. So what we've done is we basically take that traditional or legacy data model of this bottoms up approach, the spray and pray, and we flipped it upside down on its head. And what we enable our customers to do through having really high quality data that's piped through Gigasheet, as well as really finely tuned targeting capabilities that we're going to get to in just a moment. And that enables our customers to reach the right people, to engage with them, and ultimately build pipeline that converts. So in providing these different types of signals that we'll mine out together, and I know that can sound like a scary word, I promise it's not. We're all going to become data miner experts in the next few moments, and you can really do it in only a couple button clicks with the power of RevenueBase piped through Gigasheet. And what that will enable you to do is size deals, so you can get a proxy of how large is this going to be in my pipeline, prioritize when to reach, what type of events are happening, or what types of signals are we seeing in the data that we can extrapolate and expand upon to really know when to reach out to somebody. And then finally, how to personalize, because you've got a level of intel that now nobody else, none of your competitors have, that you can do the outreach on. So let me flip over to what this looks like in Gigasheet. All right, so hopefully I'm still sharing my screen here. Usually a Google Meets user, so Zoom is too sophisticated for me.
It
But
looks great. You're doing great.
awesome. Thanks for the confirmation. So here is what this looks like. Steve had shared an earlier example of an entirely different use case. For RevenueBase specifically, our data sits in Snowflake. What we're able to do is then pipe our data through or out of Snowflake through Gigasheet to our customers to create so many different actions and capabilities on it. It's a really great partner for large data sets like RevenueBase because, as you can see, there's over 150 million rows. These are all indicative of people records. And then as far as the columns go, I won't scroll too much to make anybody nauseous, but there's almost 170 different unique insights that we can search upon. There's a lot of classic insights that you'll see that you can get with other data providers, very standard stuff, which we think is table stakes. I like to call those explicit data points. And then there's a lot of implicit data points that we have that are really powerful when you're trying to identify certain audiences and really just diving into or eliminating noise. So right out the gates, what I'll just call out before we get into some specific use cases are, you'll see that there's this 154 million and some odd rows. When you're a RevenueBase customer, you get access to all of the data. We don't charge per credits and we don't charge for seat licenses. We're not optimized to sell you the most data, though you have it all. We're optimized to sell you the right data. And then month over month, we refresh our database. Every single email in our database is verified, and we re-verify them on a rolling 60-day basis or less. So the end result is you'll have actual emails that deliver in actual inboxes and you'll be able to engage. Plus, you'll layer on all of these additional really unique insights to really understand the pain that a prospect might have. I'm going to flip over to an example use case here of what you can actually do with the data. So you've got hundreds of thousands of rows, and you've got basically 100 plus different unique insights to use. How do you want to create action on it? Very simply, everybody wants to be able to filter the data. So in a lot of legacy data providers, it's very hard for B2B companies to go after other B2B companies. We actually use our own data, particularly for LinkedIn ads, to generate our audience, and we see below a $200 cost per meeting booked, which is really awesome and far above what the market average is because we have these targeting capabilities. So what I have is an example for locating or identifying B2B organizations. There's not ever an industry filter that says B2B. Sometimes there can be in data providers, tends to be very noisy. So what we did is we mine out these signals. So we've got something really unique called this LinkedIn company industry. That's very standard, but when it's layered and paired on with LinkedIn organization specialties, this is scraped directly from the LinkedIn company page. It's those tags that they like to use to present themselves to the world for SEO or anything that they want to be known for, as well as the LinkedIn About Us. We're able to actually sift out noise. Anything that's consumer facing or anything that's not related to business organizations, it's really easy to get very controlled in who you want to go after in this audience. So we have several different keywords that we found tend to not lead itself to bring in the right companies. And so we remove them. Then we can layer on the number of profiles that employees have, any types of interesting funding signals too. And voila, now we've got all of the B2B companies on a global scale. So that takes down this 154 million rows to about 5 million. And then you'll see I've used Gigasheet's group function because I want to know of all of the people records of those 5 million people, how many companies is that across? And so in a matter of seconds, I have now probably 6 button clicks. Now I know all of the companies in the B2B space that I can go after. Many organizations will then dig into this further and layer on their specific ICP criteria. Maybe it's pertaining to adding in specific industries, perhaps leveling out some additional keywords or phrases that you see, like artificial intelligence. Again, not a classified industry. Typically in the taxonomy of other types of data partners, you can actually go in and search for every single artificial intelligence company just by typing in the keywords. Sounds really simple, but it's always been such a friction point for people in in working with other data partners.
I would add to that, like Sammy, I think it is so cool. We use this data ourselves too. And the way I describe it to people is like, what if you could have all of LinkedIn in a single giant spreadsheet and be able to just search for anything? Now, obviously, you guys add a lot more data than is available on just a single LinkedIn page, and you do a lot of cleansing and other stuff involved. But I think I'm sure you're going to get into it, but it's really powerful to be able to just simply do that. Like whenever we were building our, outreach campaigns and things like that, trying to figure out target customers, it's whether you're using Sales Navigator or you're using some other like engagement platform, it's always like super restrictive, right? Like they have some canned filters, but this is I love just the flexibility, and because you have so many columns and fields that you can use here, you can really put together like whatever you want. And I think I don't know. I just wanted to chime in and say that that's how like we think of it and use it on the Gigasheet side as well.
No, that's certainly appreciated because it is very much taking anything that you can manually scrape from the internet and then appending it into one area so that you're not doing this bottoms up approach and clicking a Chrome plugin and then going and importing that into your CRM. Instead, you've got it all at your fingertips, that top-down approach I had talked about. And then it's appending all of the contact information. So you'll have somebody's LinkedIn, you'll have their mobile phone number, you'll have their direct line, you'll have their email. And now you've kind of like, you don't have to spend your time building lists. You can spend your time engaging with the prospects.
Totally.
So I'll show you another example too, just in that same vein, because I think it's really unique and interesting. And I'm actually going to layer these 2 off, and then I'll relayer them on for fun. So here's an example of an actual use case that we had on the fly of somebody who said, I just want to know who are all the SANS certified people in the world. And for those who don't know, because I didn't know, but SANS certified is a cybersecurity type of certification. And a lot of organizations that have SANS certified folks obviously have a proclivity to want to purchase types of cybersecurity, maybe even cybersecurity marketing types of solutions. And for them, that's their TAM. They just need to know who are all of the companies in the world that have SANS certified people. And then of those companies, how do I prioritize which ones to go after? So here's where you start. 3 button clicks you'll see here. We have certifications that people will post on their LinkedIn. And all we have to do is, does it contain SANS? Similarly, they'll also have their skills that they'll put, and then people can endorse their skills. So do they have SANS as skills? And then you'll just see we want to make sure they have an email so that we can put them in a campaign. And so in 3 button clicks, we've got a list of about 8,000 people to go after. So those are my 8,000 people for my TAM specifically, or a segment of my market, ICP. So now not only can I just export this, import it into whatever systems I want to do my outreach and campaigns on, but I can also do a little bit more strategic level of understanding, okay, let's group them into companies. So now we've got 8,000 people across almost 4,500 organizations, pretty big TAM still. And then even deeper, using Gigasheet's logic capabilities, let's layer on the job title. So we want to know specifically, like, how many different job titles, maybe in cybersecurity specifically, maybe in IT, whatever it might be. And then you can click in and it will layer them all out so that you can see that. And that way, now you're not only able to assess your entire TAM, or maybe this is a territory of your market if you want to layer on location data as well, but you'll also be able to very quickly prioritize, is this going to be an enterprise deal, an SMB deal, or where do we want to put this into the pipeline and where do we want to focus? All right. I'm going to share one final example. I think all of these examples are very different and hopefully give you a sense of the types of really explicit data you can mine out, like who's using a Salesforce CRM or HubSpot CRM. Easy stuff. But how can we do more of the implicit stuff that's really niche-y, that helps you as salespeople, as marketers, or just go-to-market folks in general, go after your audience and make more money for your organizations? So here's another example of companies that have some sort of digital transformation going on. And this is like a very common use case, and it's unbelievably hard to determine. And I think people have had to overcomplicate it because, as Jason mentioned, with a lot of other data providers, you're bending your world around the confines of their clickable filters. With RevenueBase, it can be a little scary, but we're opening up the aperture of how you can go after your market. And now you can put it in plain English or plain text, what I want and who I want to go after. And so for finding digital transformation companies or companies that are going through some sort of practice like that, we can layer on anybody at the C level. And then we want to know maybe even some digital transformation folks. And then all you have to do is figure out when they were hired, because that's a trigger point of, is it a new person? And I just have it from October 1st, 2024. I feel like probably makes sense last 90 plus days-ish of having a new C-level person going on, or somebody specifically hired out for digital transformation. Here are all of the companies that are experiencing that. And then below, if you click in, all of the people thereafter that you can go after. So this is just, or rather, these are a few different ways that you can mine data signals. And I am not a technical person. I can mine all the live long day, so can you. So I'll open it up if there's any specific questions that you guys might have.
Yeah, thanks for that demo there. I think there are a couple of things I wanted to go back to and hit on that you touched on, and one is the credit-based approach that is so typical in this industry. At Gigasheet, we're all about big data, and we often run into people who are like, I've got 30,000 leads that I want to enrich, right? Or I want to see or get more technographic details about these contacts or whatever it may be. And I love what you guys do is basically just put it out there, right? Like it's not locked up. It's that you can have full on access to the data without these like credit-based approaches. So like if you go try to price, 30,000 or 130,000, enriching those leads, like it's like, well, you got to buy this many a month, and then it's like, what am I going to wait like 6 months to enrich all this stuff? I mean, it just doesn't, it becomes cost ineffective very quickly. uh and so we often have seen great use cases for this data. So we did get a couple of questions here in the chat that I'll give to you, Sammy. Do you get hiring data uh, for these companies? Maybe talk a little bit about that. And
Sure. So we also, you can think of what is included in RevenueBase as anything that is publicly available on the internet that you and I can go and find without having any special logins or anything of that nature. So job boards is something that's publicly available, which enables us to scrape it not only to understand some level of technographics too that might not present themselves more obviously, but it also enables us to see if there's certain signals. So we have many different hiring signals. We also have a data dictionary that I'm sure I can share with you all as well who might be interested to assess. But we have basically it's built out by department, sales, marketing, HR, etc., GRC, things of that nature, so that you can layer on in addition to what we very simply had taken a look at a high level, then you can layer on those hiring signals at an even deeper level to assess, okay, they have digital transformation and they're hiring marketing and sales. Probably a really great time for me to reach out because they've got some budget.
yeah, that's a great point. Previously, I was CRO at a cybersecurity company. One of the things that we did that was very effective, but we did it with like interns, is we wanted to find companies that had more than, 20 people in the security department. And that was often a good indicator that they were ready to invest in the technology we were selling. And, it's weird with security in particular. You'll find some very big companies who seem to be underinvested. And then you'll find some small companies who have a disproportionate risk aversion. And so, like financial institutions, for example, so they might fall under a typical employee count or market cap, but they spent a lot on security solutions. And yeah, we would just have a team of people literally going through LinkedIn, trying, manually finding this data and counting those things. And now you could do it here in a few clicks with this, which is such a cool example. So other questions here. What capabilities does Gigasheet have to ensure data confidentiality and role-based access? It's a good question. And I can mention, I'll start high level and I'll let Steve like really get into the tech details. I think this may be a more technically oriented question. Well, first of all, there are simple things like export, for example. So if you wanted to share a large data set, kind of like what Sammy was showing, but maybe you don't want to allow people to dump that data. You don't want them to export it and push it to other systems. For example, maybe during like a proof of concept or a trial, or you just want to allow them to explore the data, but not push it to another system. Like that can be controlled, as well as obviously RevenueBase has spent a ton of time and intellectual property built around this. And they don't want people to go in and be able to mutilate or mutate their data or corrupt it. So there are definitely controls where it's like view only versus I want to take that and work with it. But there are other capabilities like we'll come back to this. This is actually a different question with VLOOKUPs. But Steve, why don't you talk more about the role-based? I'm getting off
Sure.
track.
Sure. It's always fun when the CEO starts talking about the tech specs. You get a little bit worried. Um, the uh, the role-based access essentially maps to your data governance strategy. Like that's the short answer. The short answer is the tables that you give your users in Snowflake or Databricks or BigQuery, or what tables they have access to in the data repository, they will have access to see in Gigasheet. There's a lot of different ways we can then tweak things for you based on your specific needs. As Jason mentioned, we can turn on and off exports. We can control who can add their own data. Lots of different options there. But in general, we're going to map to your data governance strategy already in place. Happy to have follow-on conversations for your specific needs.
Thank you, Steve. So another question we got specific to RevenueBase was, so Sammy, you showed how you could, build very complex queries to drill down from this huge 150 million rows of data down to just people in a specific region or title or industry. But one question we got is, what if I have a list of people and I want to like add the revenue-based context to it? Like maybe I already have prospects who have signed up for my mailing list or filled out some sort of inbound lead form or attended a webinar, for example, and I want to like add the revenue-based data to it. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. We can talk about VLOOKUPs and Gigasheet, but I don't know. I'm happy to take it. You can take it too.
Sure. So for revenue-based specifically, we totally understand and appreciate that you have existing data, whether it be in your CRM or from lists that are just sitting in a disparate systems that you need to enrich. So through Gigasheet, and I can share my screen again and show this, but through Gigasheet, you are actually able to enrich your own lists. And all you need to do is go over to this enrich data feature, oddly enough. And as long as you have some sort of unique identifier for us to be able to match your data to, and there's 4 different options here, whether it's the person email, the LinkedIn profile, the company URL, or the company LinkedIn profile, then you'll be able to append RevenueBase's company and contact information.
Awesome. Yeah, there's also a VLOOKUP feature as well. We won't get into that right now, but if you wanted to look up on a combination of other fields or something else, maybe that wasn't in that list, Gigasheet's VLOOKUP feature works a lot like a spreadsheet, except for it works on hundreds of millions of rows of data at a time. So, Steve, were you going to add anything here?
Nope, I think you guys got it all.
Okay, cool. I think that's it for the questions. I had one question here that I'm not sure I understand. So please feel free to add context if you did have a question there. Let's see, was somebody raising their hand here? Just check one more time in the Q&A panel. Okay, I think that's it. So thanks everybody for joining. We'd love to talk to you if you're interested in revenue-based. Sammy, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
Sure. So you can reach out to me directly. It's Sammy, SAMMY, at revenuebase.ai, or you can always browse our website. There's a few different call to actions if you ever want to sign up for a proper demo and whatnot as well.
Awesome. And at Gigasheet, you can drop us a line at sales@gigasheet.com and we'll get back to you. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Sammy. It was awesome having you. And we'll talk to you soon, I hope. See ya.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.